Hi, my name is Walter Hafner. I'm a doctor of physical therapy and co-owner of Fortitude Fitness and CrossFit BV, a CrossFit gym in Buena Vista, Colorado. And today I'm going to give you a little talk on sleep, why it's important, and strategies to improve it. Really summarize it, you just got to sleep like my two kids there in the picture. That's all we need to do. All right, talk over. No, just joking. So we're going to talk about why sleep is important, talk about the different stages of sleep, and then also the cycles that it takes for us to go through those different stages of sleep. We'll talk about kind of chronotypes and tendencies of where you may lie on that. We'll talk about strategies and sleep hygiene to help you improve your sleep duration, but also really quality of sleep, which is really important. All right, so why is sleep so important? It's important for a number of reasons. It's really our time for our mind and body to recover from what we've done during the day. It's a time for us to be able to learn and integrate the new things that we've done during a given day, get rid of old neural synapses and take out waste products and kind of recover from a mental standpoint. There are definitely associations between decreased sleep or quality and mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, um, and other mental health issues as well. And then it's also a time that our body uses to help regulate our hormones. We'll talk more about that. And then there are some different diseases that have been linked or associated with decreased sleep quality or duration. All right, so hormone regulation, there's a number of hormones that are affected by our sleep. The first one we're going to talk about is growth hormone. And growth hormone is important for a number of things, growth related. It's important for muscle development, tissue regeneration, and repair. Growth hormones generally released during the deep cycle of sleep. We'll talk more about the cycles here in a few minutes. And that happens earlier in the night, is when most of our growth hormones being released. And then testosterone has important effects for our blood vasculature, bone density, and lean muscle mass. All of those things are obviously important as we age. We want to keep our bones nice and strong and also have more muscle mass for metabolic health, but also to maintain our general function as we age. And I heard an interesting fact that if you sleep 6 hours or less for 3 nights or more in a row, that your growth hormone and testosterone levels are half of their normal value. So that's a really kind of interesting, sobering number. So if you're looking to go do a squat strength day and you haven't been sleeping well the last 3 or 4 nights, then you're not really going to have the hormones on board to really help you recover and get as much out of that strength training session. So then two other hormones, leptin and ghrelin, they're both related to our appetite that are affected by sleep. Leptin generally suppresses our appetite. And as we sleep less, we're going to have less leptin circulating through our body. And then ghrelin generally stimulates our appetite, and that will increase when we haven't been having as much sleep. And also when we have that happen, where leptin's decreased, ghrelin's increased, we tend to have more cravings for high calorie foods. So a lot of more of those processed foods that aren't going to be as good for us. Cortisol is kind of a stress hormone, and it's typically released after a fight or flight response to help mobilize and replenish energy stores. But if we have chronically higher levels of cortisol, can lead to some issues. It can lead to excessive fat storage, and it also increases your appetite as well. And so if we aren't sleeping as much, then it does actually increase your cortisol levels, as does things like chronic prolonged stress, which probably many of us have in our lives. Thyroid hormones, so a decrease in REM sleep, another sleep cycle that we'll talk about here in a few minutes, can contribute to hyperthyroidism. I think in general, sleep disturbances can affect your thyroid hormones and health. And then talking about disease risk, I think all three of these, diabetes, obesity, and cardiovascular disease, are somewhat related to the fact that is you decrease your sleep duration quality, that your insulin sensitivity decreases. And insulin is important for taking blood sugar out of our bloodstream and bring it into our body's tissues. And so when you haven't been sleeping as much or as well, then your body tissues are not as sensitive to insulin. And so to get the same response out of it, your body has to pump more insulin into your body. It's a similar thing that happens with type 2 diabetics, or as they're developing type 2 diabetes, the body starts producing more and more insulin to take care of the blood sugars. So similar process there. So there's been some studies to show that you're at an increased risk of coronary artery disease and diabetes if you sleep less than 6 hours on average or more than 9 hours. So too little sleep, but also too much sleep can be a problem as well. So really, window of sleep that we're shooting for is somewhere between 6 to 9 hours. There was another study that said increased risk of obesity by 9% for each hour of sleep less than 7 hours. And as we talked about before, when we decrease our sleep, there's also an increase in cortisol levels, which increase our appetite and also contributes to some of these metabolic issues that we see. All right, so sleep stages. On the left, we can see some of kind of a standard way for scientifically defining the sleep stages. We have our awake, alert, we have N1, which is light sleep, N2, which is a little deeper sleep, and then N3, which is our deepest sleep. That's when that growth hormone's being released. And then we also have rapid eye movement, and those make up our sleep stages. And then on the right, you can see how some different wearable technology kind of breaks down some of those stages on the Garmin watch in particular. Let's see. So wearable information from like a Garmin watch can be really helpful to see where you are sleeping. And I think it can give you trends. And I think what can be really beneficial with it is that you can see how your different choices that you make as far as some of your sleep hygiene or diet hydration can affect your sleep quality. It may not be perfectly correlated to a formal sleep study, but I think it is pretty good at giving you trends on your sleep. One thing with the wearable technology is that while that information can be helpful for some people, it can start to be not helpful if you really stress about how much sleep you're getting and whether you're getting enough stages or enough of one stage or another. So if it starts turning into something that you're stressing about and checking and now it's disturbing your sleep, not going to be as helpful for you. Kind of circling back to some of the sleep stages, we generally have more deep sleep earlier in the night and then less sleep. All right, sorry about that. Got a quick phone call. So we have more of our deep sleep earlier in the night. So we're getting more of that growth hormone released during that deep sleep earlier in the night. And then as we progress through the night, we have less and less deep sleep. And then rapid eye movement's the opposite. We have less of that earlier in the night and then more REM sleep as we progress later into the night. Whoops, jump forward too far there. All right, sleep cycles. So we go through those different stages of sleep. Let me move this guy over. We go through the different stages of sleep in about 90-minute cycles. So we go from our awake to light to deep to REM and kind of back. And it takes us about 90 minutes to go through those cycles. So with that, we generally see better sleep quality if you can get full cycles of sleep as opposed to partial cycles. So our body likes to be able to cycle through all those in kind of a nice natural pattern. So that kind of speaks to the 8-hour per night recommendation for sleep is kind of a myth and maybe really not that helpful, because really, if we were going to do 5 cycles of 90 minutes, that would be 7.5 hours would be probably a better number to shoot for. So with that, this talk is based a lot on a book by Nick Littlehales called Sleep. And he's a sleep professional who's worked with professional athletes all around the world to improve sleep and recovery from a competitive standpoint. And he's a big proponent of this system called the R90 system, where you are trying to shoot for sleep cycles versus just an arbitrary number of hours of sleep. And the goal with that is to shoot for a certain number of sleep cycles in a week. And then that gives you some leeway if some nights you don't get as much sleep and other nights you're maybe able to get more. We'll talk about other strategies for making up sleep cycles. So our goal is to hit these 90-minute sleep cycles and get a certain amount per week. So if we think back to those studies of disease risk, we probably, for most of us, want to shoot for something between 6 to 9 hours. So 7.5 hours is 5 cycles. That's probably a great place for most of us to shoot for and start with. So with that, you have to start to figure out when should be going to bed, when should be waking up, so you can get that number of cycles to maximize your sleep quality. He also talks about that for some of us, we need more sleep and some need less. So it may be something where if you shoot for 5 cycles and you notice, hey, I'm still really tired, fatigued, can't focus enough, then you might need 6 cycles. So you may adjust your sleep schedule so that you can get that 9 hours of sleep every night. And on the other side of things, if you're shooting for 5 cycles per night, but then you're tossing and turning and you have a hard time falling asleep, you're not getting good quality sleep, then you may need to try to do 4 cycles either permanently, or maybe that's for a brief period to build up a little bit of sleep debt and then switch back to the 5 cycles. So that really just depends, but we're shooting for somewhere between that 6 to 9 hours. So between 4 to 6 cycles for most of us is probably what we need to shoot for. He does talk about that, similar to what we were talking about with growth hormone testosterone. We want to try to limit how many nights in a row we get less than our ideal number of sleep cycles. So if you're shooting for 5 sleep cycles on average, you don't want to have more than 3 nights in a row where you're getting less than that, because you're probably going to start to have some negative effects from that, maybe even from a hormonal standpoint. Cool. All right, so making up sleep cycles. So let's say that you are out late and you're not able to get to bed when you need to be able to get your full 5 cycles, if you will. Naps are a great strategy to make up sleep cycles, despite kind of common belief that naps are going to really negatively impact your nighttime sleep. I think if they're timed well and used appropriately, then it shouldn't affect your sleep at night. And it's a good strategy to make up sleep cycles to hit your weekly total. So some good time windows for naps where we kind of have a little bit more drive for sleep. There's kind of that afternoon slump of somewhere around 1 to 3 p.m. There's also kind of an evening time of like 5 to 7 p.m. Maybe depending on what time you're waking up and going to bed, those times may be shifted a little bit. There's 2 different strategies you can use for napping. You could use a 30-minute recovery period or power nap, or you can do a full 90-minute full cycle nap. That's one where I would say maybe you reserve that for more of that afternoon time instead of in the evening. I think if you had a 90-minute nap at 5 p.m., then you may have some troubles falling asleep at your normal sleep time. So naps are a great way to work on making up any sleep cycles that you might have missed. So don't be afraid of naps. They're a friend. All right, chronotypes. So this is kind of just breaking down a little bit that all of us have a natural tendency of either preferring to be up a little bit later and sleeping in, or waking up earlier and going to bed earlier. And you probably already know whether you fall more into kind of the night owl camp or the early bird camp. And that's something that's genetic that you're not necessarily going to be able to change. But what we can do is start to strategize our day and set up meetings and work schedule to kind of maximize what's best for us. So if you know that you're a night owl, you're going to be better off trying to schedule things later in the day as opposed to first thing in the morning. You could think about if you have things that are more demanding, doing those a little bit later in your day instead of right away early in the morning. On the flip side, if you're an early bird, you may be more productive and with it earlier in the morning. So you may want to schedule some of your more challenging tasks or some of your more demanding meetings earlier in the day, and then schedule your more kind of medial tasks for later in the day. All right, so sleep hygiene. It's really important for our sleep quality to create a routine around our pre-sleep time and post-sleep time. Both of those are important. So, at the end of the day, as we start thinking about getting ready for bed, we want to start to decrease our work and stress. So, trying to put some of those things away, stop checking your work email. If we can, we want to start decreasing lights or dimming them, limit some screen time for blue lights, especially. So, general lights and blue lights are going to kind of inhibit our body's natural process of starting to release melatonin as the sun would be setting. So, we want to limit those things and start to dim the lights so that our body starts thinking, hey, it's time to start getting ready for bed. And then it's a time that you could use to prep for the next day. So rather than leaving those dirty dishes in the sink for the next morning, you could go ahead and do those dishes, pack your bag for the next day, do some tasks that kind of prep you for the next day, make you feel relaxed and ready, but don't take a whole lot of cognitive effort. And then you also want to declutter your brain, especially if you're somebody that tosses and turns at night. So that could be meditating, breathing exercises, or maybe even just writing down what's on your mind so that you're not going to bed thinking about all the things you got to do the next day. You want to limit any stimulants, caffeine, nicotine, anything that might be waking you up, um, processed sugars, those sort of things. Along with that, want to limit any large meals or significant amount of fluid in that last 2 hours to 90 minutes before bed. Doesn't mean that you can't have a little snack if you tend to get hungry before you go to bed, but we want to make sure that it's not a large meal. Uh, so those are all things that try to help us be able to fall asleep easier, get to sleep, stay asleep. But then once we wake up, what happens is really important then too. If you are somebody who instantly grabs your phone, you're checking your email, checking text messages, going right into work mode, your body's going to know that, hey, that's the expectation as soon as I wake up. And so your quality of sleep is going to be less than if your body knows that you might be able to ease into the day a little bit. So things to do in that first 90 minutes after you wake up. If you can get some early morning sunlight, that helps to set our circadian rhythm and the whole melatonin process. Eat some breakfast, maybe go get some exercise, go to the CrossFit gym for the early morning class, and just try to ease into your day instead of hopping right into work. And that helps your body kind of ease into the day instead of stressing about what you got to do while you're going to sleep for the next day. Another thing to talk about here, we're going to talk about here about consistent wake up time. So this is one thing that's I think is really important for helping us to set our circadian rhythm, which is kind of our body's natural process for knowing when to be awake and when to be asleep. So the key piece with this is you got to set up a consistent wake up time. So you got to look at your week and see which day do I need to be up earliest, gives me my post sleep routine time before I need to be at my first meeting or work. So you set that time, and then you need to try to stick to waking up at that time every single day, even on the weekends. All right. And then we're going to look at when should you set your bedtime based off of those 90-minute sleep cycles. So you're going to work back. Let's say that you want to be waking up at 7:30 a.m. Then if you want to get 5 sleep cycles, that means you need to be in bed asleep by midnight. Right. And if it takes you 10, 15 minutes to fall asleep, then you're in bed by 11:45, right? And starting that process. One thing that we can think about with our sleep hygiene and our pre-sleep routine is that we don't want to rush through that. So Nick from the Sleep Book really talks about that. If you come home late and you're 10 minutes, it's 11:50, and you need to be in bed by midnight to get your 5 cycles, rather than rushing through your pre-sleep routine, Nick would say, hey, take your time, do your normal stuff, calm your body down, and then hit the next 90-minute cycle. So you would go to bed at 1:30 and get 4 cycles instead of going to bed at midnight. And then maybe you try to make up that cycle via a nap at some point the next day or in the next few days, right? So better to do that so you maintain the full sleep cycles and have better quality as opposed to getting into bed in the middle of a sleep cycle. All right, so strategies to improve sleep. Last kind of slide here that we're going to go over. So some things to avoid. Try to avoid caffeine close to bed. It has a half-life in our body of 3 to 7 hours. And so it just depends on an individual how quickly you are able to process that caffeine. And larger doses of caffeine are going to take longer for you to process. So really, probably more like 8, maybe 10 hours before bed, you should stop having any caffeine. If you're hitting big old energy drinks, then maybe it's 12 hours before bed. Alcohol is something that definitely affects our sleep. It's kind of tricky because it seems like it helps our sleep because we're able to fall asleep more easily. But then it does decrease our deep sleep and our REM sleep. And it also tends to make us wake up later in the night and then we're getting out of bed and we're not getting sleep at all. Nicotine is something that it disturbs our sleep as well. So it's definitely something worth cutting out. One thing to note is you try to kick the habit of nicotine is that you're going to have some sleep disturbances in the process of quitting using nicotine. So it takes some time to then level out and get to a new normal. We already talked about large meals, sugar. We want to limit those 2 hours before bed. And then we also want to limit our fluid consumption. We want to make sure that we get our fluids in earlier in the day. All right, sorry about that. We're talking about drinking water. You want to make sure you get your kind of water consumption and goals in earlier in the day. We don't want to have water disturb our sleep, either waking up thirsty or waking up to go to the bathroom. So try to get water in earlier in the day. If you're somebody that has a water cup by your bed, that means you need to be drinking more water during the day. Get rid of that. If you're somebody that's waking up in the middle of the night to go pee, it means you might need to be drinking that water earlier in the day and not right before bed. Things that might help with sleep. Magnesium, L-threonate, and glycinate are 2 forms of magnesium that can cross the blood-brain barrier. And they have been shown to have some improvement on your sleep quality. Tryptophan is a naturally occurring hormone in foods that we eat, and it is a precursor to melatonin. So some foods higher in tryptophan can help with sleep. You could look up a list of what some of those foods are. So that's something you could use if you're having troubles falling asleep. Daily exercise, physical activity, trying to reduce stress, getting that early morning light exposure helps with the circadian rhythm, consistent wake up time like we talked about, having an appropriately soft to firm mattress for you. Nick in the sleep book talks about that the ideal position is probably on our side in the fetal position for sleep quality with an appropriately soft mattress. It talks about that sleeping on your back, well, can be good. Maybe puts people a little more at risk for sleep apnea or snoring, which can disturb your sleep. Sleeping on your stomach sometimes can be painful for the neck or shoulders if you have any of those issues. Other things to do is set up your room for good sleep is using some blackout curtains. So getting rid of any light. If you have any electronics in the room, covering up all those little ambient light sources will help with your sleep. Also, using a sound machine can be helpful for blocking out any ambient noise. So noise that might wake you up in the middle of the night, having the sound machine kind of covers it up a little bit. You might have a little better quality sleep. Then you want the room set to like 60, 65 degrees. So a little bit cooler helps prep our body for sleep. Last thing just want to say is this is the book that I used for a lot of this talk. It's a great read. Please take a look at it. It's quick, it's easy, and it's got a lot of good information in there that we didn't cover. And then here are my references for the talk. Please reach out if you have any questions. Shoot us an email at owners@fortitudefitnessbv.com. Thanks. Bye.